Well, guys, it's June 30th of 2024, so I guess it's time for me to review all comic book superhero content, both movies and TV shows, that have released up to this point this year. Unfortunately, there has only been one movie released this year from either of the big studios, Marvel or DC, or just any comic book related superhero, and that is Madam Web. But there are still other things to talk about. So without further ado, let's get into this next episode of Generic Essay Series. First, hi, my name is Tyler and I love film, and, well, I'll shut up now. Echo is the only MCU endeavor thus far this year, and it is a very peculiar and interesting one. Though I do not think this show is bad, it is definitely not great, and I find it lackluster, dull, a little boring, and strange in some parts, but there is good to this show. I think the show looks visually appealing with non-irritating direction, and all the acting in this show is perfectly believable and acceptable. Though the not too gritty tone and the confident pace of the show are welcome, it doesn't feel like the audience is given enough time to connect with the characters in this show from the get-go, other than Maya herself. We are kind of just thrown into this obscure and niche world of crime. The action in this show is very meh, and many of the plot points, as well as the background origin story mythical elements, feel strange, random, out of place, and forced. In the end, the show feels unnecessary and like it doesn't need to exist, but it is still a cool side detour if you want this side of Marvel, which I doubt you really do since nobody really watched the show, but it's not terrible. Despite the limited and muted presence, Vincent D'Onofrio is excellent in this show. Yeah, Kingpin is just great, and it's cool that we got to see Daredevil for that one fight scene. Some of the flashback elements are really cool, and there are some cool technical elements to this show. Overall, it is remarkable how the creators of this show were able to make a show like this from a relatively obscure and lesser used character from Marvel Comics. The filmmakers seem to do the most that they could with very little, and that should be commended. I give the show a 6.6 out of 10. Okay, this movie kind of came out of nowhere to me. DC's Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1. Weirdly enough, this film, which I'm very glad exists because it is entertaining, does not follow the comic book very well. In this case, this is only an issue because this, too, feels surprisingly dull, especially compared to the original event. The film and its sequel completely omit many important elements of the original comic that, if included, would better explain and allow the events to play out in terms of the multiversal shenanigans of this movie. Based upon the fact that this film is part of the Tomorrowverse universe of DC animated films, which directly followed the original DC AMU, it's crazy that this universe is ending after about only 4 years with this event. So much of the intended gravitas of this story is lost. But seeing these characters and watching the story play out will always be fun to watch, despite the cheap-looking animation this time around. Is it really worth mentioning Madam Web? Well, for me, yes, it is, because if I didn't mention it, I wouldn't live up to the title of this video. But yeah, this movie, it's not the greatest thing ever made, but I in no way believe it's as bad as everybody else is saying. Everything about the movie is really weak, just from the dialogue to like any attempt at cohesive story or character development. But the film does somewhat have a purpose and message with themes, I guess you can call them, of found family and protection, but they're more just like plot elements to kind of flesh out these nothings that are the characters in this movie. Though I believe the movie to be dull, it does have this kind of slightly entertaining quality, but in a completely unthreatening way. It can still be fun to watch this absurd movie and its barely entertaining cheesiness that happens to be Spider-Man themed for kicks. But at the end of the day, all it feels like is a disappointing and pointless endeavor and a waste of money and time for Sony. It is still cool that we got something like this and we got to see these characters on the big screen. It's not nearly as bad as everybody says, but it's definitely not good and fails to prove itself as unique, a worthwhile watch, or anything cinematically exceptional. I give this film a 5.7 overall. Invincible Season 2 Part 2 is just some more very good Invincible content. Not as good as the first season, but still very good superhero content. Though this season feels a little more needlessly convoluted and self-indulgent, the villains really highlight this colorfully fun superhero show. The villains, such as Angstrong Levy, as well as the mature relationship and moral dilemmas throughout the show, really place it a step above the rest. I give the season an 8.8 overall, with the last season being a 9.2. X-Men 97 did not disappoint. It is perfectly reminiscent and as alike to the original as you would want it to be, while having new stories and animation style and a welcomed, more mature perspective on its title characters. Though it can be preachy at times, this show pulls no punches in any of its concepts or themes, as well as relentless and heart-wrenching moments that happen throughout the show that you'll just have to watch because it's too good to spoil. The show plays with the format and structuring of a television season masterfully and perfectly explores each one of its characters and does not waste a minute. It's all the X-Men action, melodrama, and story that you've ever wanted to see before, and more. This series feels truly and definitively X-Men like nothing else before. Though I love the original series for the quality that it had as just pure entertainment and prefer it over this show, it's not by much. This show takes itself seriously and has a welcome focus on Cyclops and Jean Grey and debates matters of true morality, love, and what it means to be human, or different, or a mutant in the context of this show. Responsibility and the profound effect of emotions are also discussed within the show's themes. Though I think the show can be a little extra sometimes with its discussions, dialogue, and animation, though I don't believe every episode to be as perfect and powerful as others throughout the show. I highly recommend it, and I'm glad I've had the pleasure to experience it. I give the show a 9.5 overall. Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 2 is action-packed and focuses on new elements as compared to the first film, with Psycho Pirate being a bigger player and the Bat family coming into play. I like what both of these movies do with Supergirl, and I do like the elements that this film includes from the comics and some of the parts that it doesn't, but I don't believe this film to be as strong as the first or to really make a reinforced point about emotions, inner demons, and one's individual suffering amongst the rest of the crisis shenanigans. I still find this film to be entertaining and a worthwhile watch for DC fans, and it was cool that Terry McGinnis got to talk for 5 seconds. I also have some issues with how some of the scaling is done and the cosmic elements are executed, but I still enjoy this film, and I would definitely recommend it to a DC fan. Overall, I give this film a 7.7 out of 10. Oh, I didn't mean to use this picture twice. I have not finished or gotten very far through my adventures with Superman, but its new season did premiere on May 25th of this year. And from what I watched, this show is a very good Superman show and interpretation. First of all, the voice acting and music is very good for an animated show of this caliber, and the animation style is something I can get behind after watching a few episodes. It's not that it looks bad or anything, but just not my favorite. But the show's tweaked, fresh, and slightly different version and interpretation of Superman allows for new and interesting stories to play out. Well, kind of new at least, but still stay true to the core of Superman and develop the characters and inspire its audience to want to do better. And from what I could tell, this is a good show. I give it an 8.9 out of 10. This is subject to change once I watch the rest. This is the first time I think I've really mentioned The Boys on my channel, but I am a fan of the show. So far, I see this season to be very good, The Boys' Adventures, but I believe it to be the weakest string of them thus far. And the biggest weakness of this season is the fact that this largely satirical show that is usually very political decided to pick a side, which is not very good when it's supposed to be a satire. Then it just becomes indulgent, and the show is indulging its own superhero aspects a little too much for my taste, along with its political aspirations and its now weaker satire. Its debates on morality and concepts, though, still shine through, and the story of this show with each of its characters is still very compelling overall. I still like The Boys, but this is the weakest it's been thus far. I give this season so far an 8.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. I hope the audio didn't annoy you if you got this far.